Welcome everybody to another episode of the X Connect podcast. Today I'm here with the biggest leader on the Exeter campus, Principal Rawson. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Craig.
Yeah, Principal Rawson, I want to thank you so much for doing this in your final weeks at Exeter. It's a spring term, been here for a lot of years, but this is really the final lap, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. It is a busy time of year. It's what I refer to as joyful exhaustion. Sometimes it seems more like exhaustion than joyful, but it is a great time of year. I'm excited about finishing the year strong.
Yeah. So Principal Rawson, you've been a student at Exeter, you've been a lacrosse coach, you've been a part of the admissions team, and now of course you're principal. You've had many roles, and you've been a part of the community for a long time. Which role would you say has taught you the most about Exeter?
So, just for completeness, I was a trustee, I was a director of the General Alumni Association, and I held quite a few volunteer roles for my class. So you're right, I've been part of the community in any number of ways. I would say for understanding the student experience, nothing is quite like being a student. And for understanding the adult experience, I think being the principal, because I'm responsible for so much of the adult life at the academy and get to see that in so many more ways than I could in any other role.
Would you say there may have been specific moments or maybe a specific challenge that kind of changed your perspective? Being here as a student, that is so different than being here as like a trustee and of course as the principal. Has maybe there been a time where you really saw something through the different lens for Exeter?
Well, as a student, I was a financial aid student. I was on a very tight budget, so just finishing the year with a little bit of cash was a challenge. And so there were moments when my friends, for example, might say, let's go to grill, and I would not go. I would maybe pretend that I'd forgotten something in my room. So the experience of being on a tight budget, but I want to hasten to say I didn't think of it as a hardship. All that really mattered to me was that I was here, but it was part of my reality. Another moment that comes to mind as a student was my senior year when another senior in the dorm was up for expulsion, and the faculty seemed to want to know what other seniors, I was a proctor, what the proctors felt was RTW appropriate. And at the time I thought that was frankly an unfair burden on the seniors in the dorm, on the proctors. So I thought that was hard. As an adult, it's a big complex community. Finding our way through the pandemic, dealing with other challenges, there are lots of things that I've dealt with that helped me understand the community I was trying to serve.
How do you think the community of Exeter and the school itself has evolved or changed throughout your entire time of knowing this school?
On the one hand, I talk about our mission and values, which I think endure and don't really change. On the other hand, I say Exeter's never stayed strong by staying the same, and this is today a completely different school from the school that I attended. Among other things, we weren't even coeducational when I came as a new lower. We're a larger school. There are so many more course offerings, so many more offerings outside of the core coursework. There's just a lot of ways the program and the school have grown. So I think we're still committed to uniting goodness and knowledge and inspiring the youth from every quarter to lead purposeful lives, academic excellence, non-SIBI, youth from every quarter. These remain goodness and knowledge. These remain our core values. But how we think about those core values, how we live them, how we aspire to realize them, is really constantly evolving.
So Principal Rawson, specific to your journey, once you graduated Exeter, you went to college, and then a few years later you went to law school. After all these years of being a lawyer, what really kept pulling you back to Exeter? You know, you shared with me that when you stepped away from the space in law, that a lot of people were shocked and maybe some even disappointed, but what was really tugging at your heart to come back?
Okay, so Exeter completely changed my life, and it was the center of my life. When I was here, I spent my entire summers waiting to come back. I went from Exeter to Amherst. I went from Amherst to Stanford Law School. I took a 2-year leave of absence between my first and second years of law school to come back and work in the admissions office. So that was the first time I came back. That was very unusual, very unorthodox, and I'm sure most of my law school classmates thought, what is he doing? I guess he doesn't want to be a lawyer. But this happened, it was sort of a surprise. The dean of admissions wrote to me and asked if I would consider doing this. They wanted a recent graduate to come back and work in the admissions office. And frankly, I was flattered and honored and delighted to have the opportunity. And I just thought I would grow a lot, learn a lot, and it was great to have that break, and it turned out to be my courtship years. So I went back to law school, married. Then I graduated from law school, practiced for 2 years in Seattle, then the rest of my career was in Washington, D.C. But I stayed connected with Exeter throughout my career. Initially, I would say to give back, to sort of repay the debt, you might say, because of what attending Exeter had made possible for me, what it had given to me. But I think over time, my thinking changed a little bit, and it was less about repaying a debt and more about helping Exeter do for the next generation what it had done for me, and just believing in the mission and wanting to contribute, pay it forward, I guess. And also, frankly, it's fun. Staying involved with Exeter was deeply rewarding. I have so many friends in my class whom I didn't know when we were students, all through our volunteer activity. And then when I became a trustee, I developed deep friendships across generations. So I've been giving back. I've been helping Exeter do for today's students what it did for me. But it's also been extremely rewarding, very purposeful, very meaningful to me. So I feel enriched by it. In a way, I sort of feel like my debt has grown, not gotten smaller.
When someone graduates Exeter, if they were to take the single biggest and most important thing they could take from the school, is that the education? Is it maybe the lifelong friends? Is it knowledge and goodness? Is it non-SIBI? Like, there are many different core values that Exeter tries to place in each of the students here, but what do you think is the most important?
I don't think a student can attend Exeter and not learn and grow. So I think there will be intellectual development. Academic excellence is part of that. So I guess I would emphasize the goodness part of knowledge and goodness and non-SIBI. People don't come to Exeter, they shouldn't come to Exeter to get somewhere else. They should come to Exeter to learn and grow and prepare themselves to lead purposeful lives. That's our mission. That's right out of the Deed of Gift. So I want them leaving with the goal of making a positive difference in the world, taking what they've learned here, building on it through additional education, and finding a way to make a positive impact on other people's lives. As our core value of non-SIBI says, we really want graduates who are motivated by their concern for others as well as for themselves, to use an Exeter education for the benefit of others as well as for oneself. I think lifelong friends, that's going to happen. Growing intellectually, that's going to happen. Understanding our responsibility to use this to some greater good, we need to focus on that and not be lured by more, you might say, self-oriented purposes.
You came here as a financial aid student, and many of our students at Exeter are on financial aid. I think it's incredibly powerful and inspirational how you came through as a financial aid student and then totally worked your way up, continued in education, and now you're the principal of Exeter. What was that like coming as a financial aid student so many years ago, and did that place some sense of, I need to owe it back, I need to really make this worth my while?
Well, I had jobs on campus and summer jobs, and a lot of that income I was putting toward my Exeter education. So in that sense, I was investing in my own future and I was all in. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I didn't have any sense of hardship. I just had a sense of what a privilege it was to be here. I was aware that I was on a tight budget. I needed to be careful, but it didn't matter. Nobody cared. It didn't affect my experience. I didn't feel like this was somebody else's Exeter more than mine. When I went into class or tried out for a team or anything else I did, I felt like we were all treated alike. So I didn't feel any hardship or distinction, and certainly no stigma. We had a scholarship job which wasn't pay in those days, 3 hours a week. I was like, absolutely. If I can contribute a little bit while I'm here by being a student guide without pay, absolutely. Happy to do it. So it's a reality, but nobody cared. We all dressed, by the way. We all wore blue jeans, the same blazer. Most of us wore the same tie every day. There were not a lot of social distinctions. What mattered is how you contributed and how you treated other students. You know, arrogance, selfishness, that was not accepted. But if you treated other people well, held up your share, met your responsibilities, carried your share of the load, we were all in it together.
Thinking about all the students at Exeter, what do you think are some of the qualities that really differentiate maybe a very bright student who this isn't a great fit for versus a student who is also very bright but loves it here and thrives? And everyone comes here wanting the best experience, the best opportunities, but some students love it and some students struggle. Has there ever been anything you've kind of noticed in that difference?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of great schools, public and private. Great kids every year go to schools other than Exeter and have great experiences and go on to do great things. I think it's wonderful if somebody chooses Exeter and Exeter is a good fit, but it isn't for everybody. Some will want a smaller school. I have two brothers who went to smaller boarding schools. Some will want to stay home. Some will have an interest or passion that isn't even available here. We don't have horseback riding. But for those who come, I think you need to want to be here. This is not a place to be sent. The student has to want to be here because it's hard to be happy here and thrive if you're not really sure you want to be here and you're surrounded by people who are sure. And it helps to have, you need to find a bit of a community. It helps to have an area of interest or activity where you feel like, okay, this is something I really like and have some measure of success. So it's just good to find some areas where you feel at home. But of course, I want everyone to feel at home in the dorm. I want them to have a friend group. All of those things come down to a sense of belonging, and I want every student to have a strong sense of belonging. But you can have that and still feel like, I'd rather be at home. I'd rather be at a public high school, and that's okay. Exeter is a great school, but there are a lot of great schools. But it's helpful to, you have to have a strong sense of belonging. It's helpful to find that through a dorm community, through an activity, through a subject matter that you like, through a teacher who cares and becomes a bit of a mentor, maybe as your advisor. All of those things help someone feel like this is my home and demanding, but I feel good being here.
So kind of on the flip side, we've been talking a lot about the students and the student experience, and I'm curious, over your years, what do you think the students have taught you? If you could think of what have the students taught you or changed your perspective on maybe a few things.
Yeah. So one of the things that's different about Exeter today compared to my time is it's so much more diverse. Our international representation has grown, and there are just so many more things to do here. So I get to see students pursuing passions through the arts and music and even sports that didn't exist then. So I think that wherever I went to a math class yesterday, there was so much more student engagement in that class compared to my day. It was really impressive. So I think I'm constantly learning as student interests evolve, as the school grows. Of course, as I said earlier, there's also a certain amount of commonality, but just as this is a rich learning environment for students, and we talk about how our diversity compels our learning and growth as students, I think our diversity compels our learning and growth as adults and as an entire community. So I go to Juma prayer. Well, that didn't exist when I was here. I go to Shabbat, I go to Christian fellowship. Everywhere I go is really an opportunity to learn about the student experience and have my own thinking expanded.
So when you were here as a student, right now, of course, we have a large group of international students. There's a lot of diversity through religion, race, global diversity. When you were a student here, were the students more concentrated just in the United States, or was it even more specifically the Northeast, New England of the United States?
I think our U.S. distribution was probably pretty similar to today, but our international representation has changed. Asia wasn't really open when I came here as a student in 1968. So we didn't have much representation from Asia. We had one student in my class from Thailand. We had one student in my class whom I'm aware of, I think from Saudi Arabia, but most of the international was from Western Europe, Eastern Europe wasn't open, and South America, and a little bit of Central America. So we had what I think for a boarding school at the time was strong international representation, but more narrowly defined than today. And as I said, we didn't have girls when we started. The first girls were day students my senior year. We were only about 840 students, so we're a larger school now. So that's a little bit how it's changed.
Exeter, it's such an academically rigorous place. It's very difficult. If you mention the name Exeter across the United States, sometimes even across the world, people know it for the academics. Do you think that sometimes people can attach too much of their self-worth to the grades, the academics, although it is very important? Do you think that can be weighed too heavily on?
So my initial thought is it's not that people attach too much weight to academics, because academic excellence is a core value. We want to grow intellectually. I would say rather it's too much emphasis on college placement, college counseling. As I think I might have said earlier, we're not here to get somewhere else. So I think some students worry too much about where they're going to go next. And the reality is, wherever they go, because of what they've learned here, because of how they've learned to take responsibility for their learning, they're going to do well. And so I think maybe a little bit too much worry about what college a student will go to. But the interesting thing is, and I've said this many times, including commencement addresses, wherever our students are next year, because, as you suggest, they went to Exeter, people expect them to be intelligent and capable. What they'll really be watching for is whether they're kind and have humility. And so what I would say is, yes, we should aim high academically, but what's really important is how we treat other people and how we're motivated by our concern for others. So the intellectual development equips us to aspire, aim high in how we can make a difference in other people's lives. But it's that motivation, that care and concern for others, and that humility to not always think that you have the answers. Maybe what you really need to do is listen to others and learn from them. That's really going to, I think, determine how people live their lives and how they feel when they look back on their lives.
Yeah. Always this theme of non-SIBI, knowledge and goodness, and it sounds like what you were just saying is having academics and making sure the students are intellectual and pushing themselves, like that almost be like the engine to like get you places, but arrive in that fashion.
Right.
Kindness.
Yes. Developing academically equips you, gives you certain skills that you can use, but to what end? How are you going to live a purposeful life? And it can't just be about the awards that you get along the way. Another thing I like to say is that during the course of your life, you'll be known by your nouns. You're going to be remembered by your adjectives. Okay, so it's not that you're a proctor, it's were you kind as a proctor. It's not that you're principal, it's what kind of principal were you? What kind of lawyer or doctor or teacher or custodian? It's what kind of person were you? And the thing about nouns is they're not entirely within our control. We do not always get the job we want or the prize we're hoping for or whatever it is, but our adjectives are actually within our control. We can always decide how we're going to deal with disappointment, how we're going to deal with success, how we're going to make other people feel. So in the end, when I look back at my life, it's the letters I didn't write and the calls I didn't make to people who needed that letter or that call that hurt me the most, that caused the greatest disappointment in myself. It's not the job I didn't get or the prize I didn't win. It all comes down to human connection. The most significant things we'll do in life will be grounded in that and not in individual achievement. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Did I always think this way? No. Hopefully, thankfully, as I get older, as I go through life, as I have children, as I have experiences where I feel I've made a positive difference in other people's lives, and when I learn from where I fail, of course, I continue to learn and grow. So no, I haven't always thought this way or understood things this way, and maybe that's why it's important to share.
Principal Rawson, what are some of your best memories as principal? Like when you leave campus, what are you going to reflect on as the best moments of principal at Exeter?
That's a tough one. I mean, I've had some really special moments with students. I think our character is revealed by how we make hard right decisions rather than how we deal with difficult circumstances, not easy circumstances. And so maybe I'll look back and be glad that in some difficult moments I was willing to make hard right decisions or were helpful to people who needed help. But it all revolves around the students. But it is touching when I feel like I've helped an adult have a strong sense of belonging, feel heard and seen at home at Exeter. Naturally, as I'm leaving, I'm getting some very nice letters and notes from former students, current students, parents, and so on. And it does make me feel good to feel that I've made a positive difference in their lives. So I don't think I'd point to any one thing, but
culmination of it all.
Yeah.
All right, Principal Rawson, this has been an amazing interview.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you.
Okay.
If you were to give one piece of advice to an Exonian or any student who's still trying to figure out their place, what would that be?
Be patient. You're going to find your way. Just keep in mind that you're trying to find your way, not somebody else's way. It's your life, your one precious life, and you need to listen to your voice. When I came back here in the admissions office, that was very unorthodox. People were like, what are you doing? When I decided I wanted to leave the practice of law at the age of 60 and do something else, people were like, what are you doing? But it felt right to me, and I wouldn't be sitting here but for the willingness to make those unexpected decisions that, I love my father and admired him greatly, and in both occasions, he was pretty upset. But I stuck with those decisions. So I would say, try to listen to yourself, try to be true to yourself. Don't try to make the decisions that other people expect. Don't be afraid to maybe make an unconventional choice. The Peace Corps is an example. I've never known anybody who served in the Peace Corps who didn't consider it a powerful and defining experience. But it takes a little bit of courage to say, okay, I'm not going to go right to law school. I'm not going to go right to business school. Or I'm not going to do a tech startup or whatever. I'm just going to take these 2 years and devote my life to serving others. So I would just say, try to be true to yourself, and I think you'll find your way.
Thank you so much for this interview, Principal Rawson.
You're very welcome.
A lot of wise words.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. All right. Good luck to everybody who is watching.
Thank you, everybody, for this amazing episode of the X Connect podcast. See you next time.